Hello, everyone. Boy, Alicia, is this ever going to end? Are these changes ever going to end?
It was a quiet week last week, Mark, and then everything just all at once. Everything all at once over the weekend and then yesterday.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the Canada Immigration Live Q&A. It's December the 18th, 2024. And once again, the world is shifting. Now, we heard rumblings of this happening, and we now know very clearly that, at least I have to assume, we'll slide over here, Alicia, and we'll just let people know. This is a little Twitter post, because it's just probably as good as we can get, because there's nothing yet released on the government website. But all of you who have relied heavily on the job offer points to secure a score high enough to receive an invitation to apply are now going to see this possibility slip through your fingers, disappear. So Minister Miller announces here the removal of points through the LMIA job offer amidst immigration fraud. And that was an article in the Financial Post. But when the minister tweets his own comments from the article, I'm going to say that this is what's going to happen. So we're going to talk a lot about this. And in fact, if you go to the YouTube channel or wherever you're watching this, you'll see that there is a scheduled live. And Alicia and I are going to actually do our Canadian Immigration Podcast, episode 156, live right here where you're watching it. It will start at 11:15 immediately after we conclude our live Q&A today. So we thought we'd just do it a little bit different. We usually do those as recordings, but this time we're just going to run it live. And we're not going to field a lot of questions during the beginning of it, but possibly at the end, we might hit on a few. We'll see how it plays out. But the reality is, if you're watching the live, we will definitely talk about the impact of the removal of LMIAs on the express entry system, what it means for you. But we will do that in our Canadian Immigration Podcast coming right after the conclusion of this live Q&A. Oh my goodness, Alicia. So as we wait for people to kind of connect in as they see the live is going on, it is a pretty cold and frigid world of immigration. So not only is it cold here as we're leading into the wonderful Christmas season here, wow, 7 days, 1 week, right? A week away, we have Christmas Day. Immigration has become a pretty cold and dark place. And we see the changes, we see what's been happening, we see the impact on the many people that book consultations with us through Holthe Immigration Law. And it's really been tough for me, I'll be honest. We have these good, decent, honest, hardworking people and their employers who just want to do things right, who are now caught in this horrible vortex of immigration, now doing a complete 180-degree turn that's leaving many, many people out in the cold dark. So I'm sure at the beginning of 2024, you didn't see this happening. But what do you feel this is going to do for 2025?
Well, they wanted to bring the permanent residence numbers down and they wanted to bring the temporary residence numbers down, and they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. And with the political changes south of the border, it's also resulted in, well, somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction for us here. And this is another announcement that we wanted to bring up, which was the government's announced plan to strengthen border security and our immigration system. And just last night, I went to a hockey game in Calgary. Unfortunately, my Flames lost in overtime, but I went with a good friend who's a border officer. And we had lots of opportunity to talk as we drove up. And I was actually reading this to him. They're the last to know sometimes, the officers. But I was reading this to him, all of the changes and the things that are going to be affecting the border. Like here, we see the RCMP will deploy a new aerial intelligence task force comprised of helicopters, drones, and mobile surveillance towers. Counter-drone technology will support RCMP officers and provide 24/7 between ports of entry. And so as I was reading this, the officer's like rolling his eyes. But this is all a direct impact of Trump and the statements that he's made about, imposing some pretty hefty tariffs on the country unless we shore up our border. And so this is typically what drives the ship. I remember, Alicia, after 9/11, 2001, and I was in law school, and then that summer, 2001, 2002, I think I got my dates right. Yeah. I was then working on the border, and it wasn't long after that that the Canada Border Service Agency was created as a result of the terrorist attacks in the Twin Towers and the other locations on 9/11. And and at the time when I worked there, I was an immigration officer on the border. And then there was Canada Custom and Revenue, which the customs did the search and seizure, and we just helped to facilitate people at the border. And then those departments were merged. So we are heavily influenced by what happens south of the border. And that's to a large extent what's happening here. But Alicia, I'll let you talk a little bit about this latest one, which will absolutely impact people, which is this one, minimizing unnecessary border volumes.
Yeah.
So do you want to chat a little bit about this, Alicia?
So this is huge. So buried in this, and this is a CBSA announcement from the Government of Canada. So it's not on the IRCC website, it is on the CBSA website as a news announcement. And it does talk about information sharing as another thing, but then this is what's really going to affect a lot of people. So we know that the government has been really reducing the ability and who can flagpole. And so as of April of 2023, very, very few people could actually apply at the port of entry. It was quite narrow. And now they're saying basically the US hates flagpoling, specifically the border officers on the US side, and this is a pain point that has come to the fore yet again. And so probably it's going to be almost a blanket prohibition against any sort of flagpoling, but we'll see. We haven't
Yeah.
seen what the new regs are yet. This is also super important, the second bullet point that the government's proposing in the fall economic statement to amend the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. So we're talking about a number of amendments, not only to the act, but also to the regulations when we're talking about changes to express entry points for LMIAs, but basically extending new authorities to cancel, change, or suspend immigration documents and to cancel, suspend, or stop accepting new applications. Like literally, we're going back to like decades ago when immigration just said, we're not processing these types of
Yeah.
immigration applications at all. And it just, people got their applications returned, which caused a huge hue and cry. But they're saying, well, we want that flexibility to do that yet again. And then they're saying it's going to give Canada full ability to manage its resources. And I know some of the other articles that we've been seeing coming out of this media conference is also talking about streamlining for faint hope clause refugee claims. So they've been talking about that as well. And then they're also saying, if countries tend to be refugee source countries and they're not taking back their failed refugee claimants or people who've gone through the process and are now at removal stage, then probably Canada's going to start putting like requirements that people can't come in the front end, right? If the countries are not going to facilitate removal on the back end, then there's additional measures, new restrictions on countries that don't rapidly facilitate the return of their citizens. So we have yet to see what those are.
Yeah. Well, Alicia, we have an unbelievable number of questions that are coming in as a result of these two comments. And so why don't we just start hitting them? We'll give a shout out to Colleen, who's up in snowy Edmonton. And it is a little bit snowy here, not too bad. I had to shovel a little skiff of snow off of my driveway yesterday, but it hasn't really replaced. So I don't know about you, Alicia. Um,
Calgary's
it's
got, yeah, just a tiny little skiff of snow.
yes. All right. Okay. So let's see here. This is one that fits right in with what you were talking about. This is from Anand. Will changes to the FES 2024 to give IRCC more power to cancel immigration documents apply to in progress PR applications as well? And, this is something that under any other circumstance, I would say, no, it's not going to apply. These are expedited. There isn't a super high volume. But the reality is, there was a time, like Alicia indicated, I think it was about 2011, 2012, I can't remember, where we didn't have express entry. And the Conservative government was facing backlogs of almost 600,000 permanent resident applications, and they had no meaningful way of processing them because they kept the levels, annual levels plans at about, what was it, 250, maybe 280,000 a year. And that's global. That's all of them. But when you've got 600,000 applications in the queue, federal skilled worker program applications, they just decided, you know what, we're just going to cull them all out. We're going to return all the applications, even if they're in the queue for processing, and we're going to reset and initiate a new way of doing this. And so there is precedent for this, Anand. And I don't want to be a fearmonger. You know, individuals that have express entry applications in the queue, personally, Alicia, I think there's a low likelihood that they're just going to cull out express entry applicants because of the way they're managing the intake. And there are levels plans, and they are set, and they have to meet those plans. And express entry is an important part of it. But other programs, self-employed, startup
Startup
visa
visas.
programs,
Yeah.
right? Those could distinctly be caught by this provision, and they would not say it if it was not going to be a power that they intended to use for some purpose. And Alicia, maybe you can just talk a little bit about the regulatory requirements. So this isn't just a matter of Minister Miller. I don't know if I still have him. No, I can't pull him up. I don't know if it's just a matter of him waving his magic wand and just saying this is the way it's going to be. Like, what actually needs to happen for some of these more drastic changes to occur, including the removal of job offer points for express entry, which if you're joining late, Alicia and I, if you look at our the scheduled lives at 11:15, we're going to talk about the removal of job offers specifically and the impact it has on express entry. There's just so much to unpack. It just made sense to do a separate live. So it's going to be episode 156 of the Canadian Immigration Podcast, but we're going to do it live. So make sure that you check that out. So if you're wondering why we're not talking more about it, that's why.
Yeah, so I will speak more about that when we do our podcast live at the end. But basically, there are two ways right now that people under express entry are getting arranged employment job offer points. And one is under if you're applying for a federal skilled worker and you need to have those selection grid points, the 67 out of the 100, there are arranged employment points there. So presumably what's going to happen is that the minister or immigration is going to have to change the immigration and refugee protection regulations under section 87 and 86 that talk about points for selection factor grids, and then an 82. And then the other thing that they'll have to do is if they're going to change the CRS factors, so those are the comprehensive ranking score factors, then they will also have to do a new ministerial instruction with respect to express entry. Those are easier to change because they do them pretty much every week when they do a draw. We did have a draw under PNP on December 16th. So they can change those ministerial instructions for express entry much more easily than they can the full immigration and refugee protection regulations. But they will have to do a regulatory change for the entire immigration and refugee protection regulations before this new change with the LMIA selection grid could come into effect. It will be easier for them to change the CRS on the back end that applies to FSW and CEC and FST. And so we'll have to see, because right now, the other thing that happened was immigration just changed their whole website yesterday. So if you've
Yeah,
logged on within the
it's
last
got a different
24
look now,
hours,
you guys.
everything looks different. I was super frustrated because we were trying to submit an express entry profile yesterday. The whole server went down. Then we couldn't do the Alberta expression of interest because we needed the federal expression EE profile. Anyways, the website looks different now. So it remains to be seen when they will update this. Right now, they are still giving those points for the LMIA points. But, and I see a bunch of questions talking about what will happen to the non-LMIA points. So if you go back to my blog on our website, on the Holthe Immigration Law website, I break down how do you claim arranged employment points in express entry, which job offer points are going to be acceptable. And there's three different scenarios. One is a new LMIA, one is an existing LMIA with you as the named worker, and the other one is if you have been working, so can I claim CRS points for a job offer? This is the article. So the third scenario is if you are working in an IMP, so an International Mobility Program category that is LMIA exempt, but employer specific. And so in that circumstance, you would have had to have been working for that employer for 1 year on a closed work permit. And so in this scenario, maybe they will not change this. Maybe they will keep that people still could get those 50 arranged employment points, but only if you are on an employer-specific closed work permit and have been working for that employer for at least a year. and they've given you a new job offer and intend to continue to employ you for a year after PR. So we will have to see what happens with that last category, because even though Minister Miller's put this on Twitter, we or X and has written about it, there's no regulatory changes. So we don't know how the rubber is going to hit the road at this point yet.
Yes. All right. There is, yeah, and these questions that we have here, you can see, does this flexibility of IRCC and control over its immigration documents mean that they would cancel the currently existing process PR application? And so, like I just bring this up just to echo the other question that was made. And yeah, if these regulatory provisions are implemented, they become law, then they do have the ability to do that. And with ministerial instructions, as it is right now, they have tremendous control to make very quick, immediate changes without needing to go have regulatory changes that involve everything involved with the enactment of laws in Canada. So be aware of that. Let's just see here. I've got a bunch of people. I love this one, Camby. Hey, Mark, how much money you make annually as an immigration lawyer? 500,000? Camby, I wish I made that much money. That would be so blissful. Oh my goodness, that would be so blissful. What would I do, Alicia, if I made that much money? Maybe some of our fine consultants out there who have more financially motivated practices are clearing that much money, but I can tell you very clearly, Camby, that is not me. Yes. Yeah. Alicia, I
Mark,
think you're probably in that category. Yeah.
I am not making anywhere near that either. When we talk about those regulatory changes, I did want to at least mention one little piece of good news, and that is that
Yes.
they did make a regulatory change. And so on the weekend, on Saturday, they announced. So, what happens when the government is going to make a regulatory change is that they have to publish it in the Canada
In the
Gazette.
Gazette.
And
Mm-hmm.
so there are two new programs, new
Oh, yes.
federal PR pathways. And so this will be kind of maybe a lifeline for some people. And so we should mention it.
Yeah.
They published these notices over the weekend, and there are two new programs. So one is the Francophone Community Immigration Class, and the other one is the Rural Community Immigration Class. And they were published at the
Yes.
same time, and they're
Come
very
on.
similar in terms of the program requirements. So there will be two new
There we
federal
go.
permanent residence pathways.
Yeah.
So there you go. Mark posted about this as well on X, and so this one is for rural communities, and then there also at the same time was one for francophone communities. So keep in mind that these are all outside of the province of Quebec for both of them. It has similar types of requirements to express entry in a lot of respects in terms of making sure that people have valid temporary status at the beginning and at the end of the application process, which is going to be hard, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
even if you have employers and they've been designated by the Economic Development Organization and you have a community area that fits, the people have to have had specific work experience in that community. They have to have had certain levels of education, language, and they certainly have to have been able to prove that they're going to intend to reside in that community. And so hopefully this will be a little bit of an olive branch for some applicants, but really immigration is saying that if you want to be able to live in Canada, then go where the community needs you. And so they're saying this for rural and they're saying it for
Yeah.
francophone. And they
Yeah.
haven't yet published. So I saw some questions on there, which communities are going to be designated rural communities. They
Yeah.
haven't yet published it on their
No.
website. They will be at some point, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. And that's what, if you go to my post here, so yeah, literally the same day it was released, I think it was Saturday, 14th, 7th, 18th. Yeah, Saturday. So, yeah, the new pathway for rural Canada. So there are the two programs like Alicia indicated, but basically in this Twitter post, if you just, you follow me on Twitter or X, whatever they want to call it these days, I went through and I broke down, you know, the key program highlights: eligibility, work experience, international students, language, settlement, financial proof. And then I added a few of my own little takeaways. And I just want to highlight these because they apply to both programs. But if you're out of status, it's a no-go for you, like Alicia said. Not all occupations will cut it, just those deemed a priority by the Economic Development Organization for that particular community. Employers need to actually support their employees and not be schmucks. So essentially, the employers that are going to get through this are ones that are going to be well established in the community, and they have a certain level to attain to show that they're supporting the worker and they're taking steps. And then
Well,
candidates,
and
this is you guys.
and
Oh yeah,
and that's in the legislation, Mark. Like,
yep,
actually, it's
it's
saying
built
that
right in.
the designated employer criteria is that
Yeah,
the employer has to have successfully completed intercultural
yep,
competency training. They have to
training.
have
Yep,
completed mandatory onboarding training. They have to support the settlement of each applicant and accompanying family members by facilitating settlement and social services support. So,
yep,
you know, and if you take a look, the designated employers cannot be businesses owned by a representative who's a person
yes,
referred to in Section 91, Sub 2. And
yep,
who's that? That's immigration consultants.
yep.
It's also lawyers.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's all broken down all in here. If we go a little bit further, you as a candidate, and I'm speaking to you guys, must actually intend to reside in the community. It goes without saying, right? It's a provision that's actually built right in to as a section within all of this. Even the previous regulations that affected the rural Northern Immigration Program, that expectation is always and will always be a part of the program. It's the whole purpose for it. It's not designed just for you to be able to go through this real community immigration class and then move back to Toronto or wherever you're originally want to live. It's designed to help infuse life into these rural communities. And so make sure whatever you do that and as soon as this, like, it's not officially launched, we don't know what the communities are. I know there's a bunch of people that had comments in here. A new pathway for exploitation and fraud. And my response here was, I said, I sure hope not. And Alicia and I have worked with many of the communities in Alberta under the rural renewal stream to teach them how to identify fraud within the process. They're the gatekeepers. And if they're vigilant and take ownership, fraud can be significantly reduced. But it
Mhm.
takes someone who's willing to take ownership over it. And and another
And
person commented here. Go ahead, Alicia. Yeah.
I would have to assume, so the government, the federal government, has the ability to designate which community partners are going to be able to be eligible for this program. And I believe that if they see that the community partners are not doing their due
Mm-hmm.
diligence in terms of
Yeah.
vetting the employers or the applicants,
Boom.
they're going to pull them. That
Yeah.
designation will just be lost.
Yeah. And then this individual says the pathway for international students looks vague. We're awaiting the final release. Well, yeah, there is no pathway for international students. And this is what you guys have to understand. When it comes to anything that previous ministers have said regarding creating nice transitions for international students, that is not the case. In fact, what they're doing now is looking for every way possible to have international students not stay permanently, but go home. So anyone who's expecting some kind of amnesty or anything like that, each of these steps, including even flagpoling and the barrier to flagpoling. And what is that? Well, like Alicia talked about, we're focused on people who come as a visitor, who then get an LMIA, then decide to go down to the border to apply for their work permit, which in the past has been something, people have been able to do on occasion. We never advise our clients to do that, but they're now looking at shutting that down. And largely it's due to pressure from the US. The officers on the US side feel like it's overburdening them having to turn people around, and they've complained about it for years. And the CBSA also feels like this is an immigration problem, not their problem. And when you have processing times within IRCC, which are 170 plus days for a work permit extension, and if people are trying to change employers, or it's going to put them basically without being able to work for 7 months, well, they intend to try to find whatever pathway they can, which is to go down to the border, do a loop around the pole, come in, which we call flagpoling, and reapply for the work permit, a new permit at that stage. And so the CBSA they're saying, look, we need to, if you want us to tighten these borders as Trump wants us to, and prevent this illegal crossing and all this nefarious activity that's going to, if we don't clean it up, going to result in 25% tariffs or whatever, then you got to remove this other stuff from us and reduce our burden for processing. We only have so many officers. This is kind of the mentality. And so, we saw a lot of the stuff, including landings, be shifted inland, with the eCoper portal during the pandemic. They created other avenues to allow for work permits to be processed from within Canada. I don't know if they'll ever open up visitors being able to apply within Canada because they distinctly want to remove this ability. But this is what we're dealing with, Alicia, and it has a huge impact. So anyone who's, within this comment, the pathway
Well,
for international students, you're darn right it looks vague because it's non-existent other than the
well,
traditional route.
okay, so I do think that basically these new programs are it. The rural community immigration class and the Francophone community immigration class are probably what they're going to now brand as pathways for students. And the reason that I say that is because there are specific sections within these new regulatory announcements when you look down at the required work experience. And so one of the requirements for the programs is that people have the work experience within that designated community. They do have an international grad exemption. And so there are
Yeah.
some specific
Yeah.
exemptions that will benefit students if they meet those eligibility parameters. But this is probably it. Like this is probably all they're going to extend. And so if you don't meet these requirements, then that is not going to be helpful for you.
Yes. And as we go through here, you can see these are the regulatory provisions that are set in the Gazette. We expect that to a large extent the program will actually look like this, but the reality is things can still change. It's not written in stone, and until it's officially, implemented, there's a lot of policy interpretation. This is what Alicia was talking about, the international
Yeah.
graduate exemption. And so
Yeah.
as we go through this process, sure, there will be some things like, for example, Alberta and some of the provinces have unique programs that are designed to make it a little bit easier for graduates who attended post-secondary education in those provinces. They exist. And
Mhm.
so there is an emphasis on that versus students moving from province to province. But really, we'll see how it plays out. And as soon as it does, like I indicated in my X post, we will make sure that we go live and have a nice a nice live stream to break it all down once we figure out what's happening. All right. Okay, let's jump. Time is zipping by here. Doobie here. Let's pull this here. He says, watching from Zimbabwe. Welcome. Great to have you. If there are no more points for job offers, do you think the CRS score will come down for CEC? Maybe 480 will get a chance. That's a nice segue, Alicia. What do you think if we pull up our newly designed rounds of invitations here, and we look at the last round, December 16th, which was a
PNP.
PNP nomination right there, round of invitations, 1,085. That's pretty high for a PNP. The lowest score, 727, which effectively meant that person had 127 CRS points when they were drawn.
And
But
what I
yeah,
was really hoping, Mark, I was hoping they would give us the breakdown of people in
yes,
the 500 to 600
501
range,
to
and they didn't do
600.
it.
Still don't. Yeah. Yeah. I
No.
don't know why. And, guys, before we only had the 401 to 450 breakdown. And then a
Mhm.
number of years back, when the scores kept rising above 450 and they were more in this range here, then they opened up this breakdown here. So it would be really nice to see what this is. So as of this draw, there's not almost 20,000 people above 500 CRS points. Just
Mhm.
crazy, just insane. So even with these changes, it's going to take time. So just to respond to the question from Doobie here, getting down to 480, I do not see happening in any near future, at least with respect to general draws. And you can see when we go to 491 to 500, there's still 12,000. 481
Well,
to 490,
I
there's still
I guess it
11,000.
depends, Mark. Like if
Mm,
they automatically change the system and anybody who has an express entry profile right now automatically gets 50 points taken away when they
yeah,
enact these new regulatory
yeah.
changes, maybe
I
it
guess it's
does axe those
possible.
points.
I guess it's possible. Just to reiterate, and this is something that I cover in my, I'm just going to pull this up here, the Canadian Immigration Institute. You can see the links below. Actually, I'm not sure if I have a link here in the live, but um, if you haven't downloaded this Common Mistakes, definitely do that. But if you look at our course here and the Express Entry one, which Alicia, now I'm going to have to probably spend Christmas updating and creating the 2025 version to accommodate for this. Thank you so much, immigration authorities. Anyways, when you look through here, You can see we've got a breakdown of all of the courses and everything that we have in here. But what in the module 1 here, I have a nice little CRS case scenarios here that are kind of fun. And one of the things that I show is that a person who has a master's degree, they have 3 years of foreign work experience, they have at least a CLB 9, and they're 29 or younger, has 469 CRS points. So if you remove the 50 points for the job offer, that's definitely going to drop it. Anyone who has worked for 1 year in Canada is going to have an additional 40 points if they're single, or 35 if they're married. That's added on to that. And then, of course, if they've studied, there's either 30 or 15 points there. Or if they have a sibling, there's another 15 points. So there's points that are still hanging out there. But the big one that I think is still going to keep the scores above 480 is the years of Canadian work experience. And so when people are applying outside of Canada, now you've mentioned CEC, so I'm not sure if you've got Canadian work experience already, Dubé, but for people that are here, it's going to take time. And individuals that run out of time and they no longer have a valid work permit have to go home, they continue to be eligible for the CEC for up to another 2 years because they need to demonstrate 1 year in the previous 3 years that they have Canadian work experience. So that's a factor to remember. So I don't see the scores just plummeting right away, notwithstanding the measures, but for sure they will go down. And when we go back to these points and we look at the previous rounds, okay, no, this is new. I'm hoping I'm clicking on the right thing. When we look at the previous rounds and we go all the way back to the more general draws, and who knows, Alicia, maybe they're only going to have Canadian experience class, and maybe they're only going to have category-based draws. I don't know. Yeah. But if we go back all the way, if we can find a general draw here, come on, there we go. This days of 529, I think that's where it's potentially going to come down. So the high score's 549. That's people really that have job offers and the Canadian work experience. To get up that high without either the 50 points, maybe they're Francophone too, maybe they're French speakers, but it's still, there's so many people drawn through the Francophone draws that I think they're constantly being purged out. So I think this is really job offer and Canadian work experience that's kind of driving these up, at least with the general draws. But it's been like April. So April of 2024, that was the last time they did a true general draw. And it's been category, CEC, PNP, really. And even then with our PNPs, they've now started to restrict it to the ones that they've isolated, including healthcare and French. And I think we had a trades level, right? So all of these are factors.
I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this new Francophone community immigration class, because the language requirements for that are an NCLC level 5. And so theoretically, more people will qualify for that. So we might actually, get people trying to go for that category instead of trying to do a federal express entry with the Francophone targeted. So because you need still NCLC level 7 to get a targeted Francophone draw.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Kamboj says, hey, Mark, what do you feel with frequent changes in immigration system? Will there be an improvement in the reduction in the inflation of housing system and towards efficiency of Canadian healthcare? Well, like for quite a while, there was a lot of rhetoric on both sides. It's all politics. And there was a lot of vilifying of international students and taking up housing and all those kinds of things. And there's no doubt that when you bring in millions of people, that it does have an impact on the availability of housing. But there's a lot of different pressure points that are causing that, including the lack of housing builds and the lack of just infrastructure in place. And when it comes for healthcare, the lack of doctors also contributes to the inability to access Canadian healthcare. But no one is so naive to believe that there's no impact as a result of the large numbers of temporary and permanent immigrants coming to Canada. But will these measures make a change? If they want 1 million people to leave Canada by the end of 2025, which is projected, those are the numbers they're expecting because of the changes that they're making. Of course, it's going to create less pressure on the housing. If you have, if you have 500,000 of those 1 million people, new accommodations available, it's going to have an impact. But it's just, there's so much speculation here. So nice to see someone connecting on LinkedIn. And that's a fair question. Cliff says, how does it impact the existing PR applications with LMIA 50 points that were already submitted to IRCC? So Alicia, what are your thoughts on people that already have their AORs? You know, are they going to retroactively say, nope, we're not going to give you points anymore because there's a chance that maybe your LMIA is fake or a fraudulent one? You know, this is really what the minister is saying.
Yeah. So we'll have to see, but we have seen in the past that when they make changes to Express Entry, they just make changes to Express Entry. And so when they did different ministerial instructions in the past that required like postal codes and things like that, they just updated the system. And then if you didn't go in and proactively fix your account and update your profile, you're just ineligible. And so I'm guessing that they will just change the system. It will affect a bunch of existing profiles, and that might kick a whole bunch of people out. Or at least lose those 50 points, or some of the people who are relying on arranged employment. Remember, I said that there's arranged employment for selection grid points, that would reduce it by 10 points. And so if you no longer meet that 67 pass mark, then you're not eligible at all. So that's a big issue. But my guess is for people who've already received acknowledgements of receipt, have already submitted their permanent residence application, it's probably okay, like fingers crossed. Because that's an in-process application, and it would be administratively difficult for them to try to pull all those in-process ones out if they haven't even made the regulatory change yet. So my guess is they have to make that regulatory change. It has to be published in the Gazette in order to make the selection grid change. The ministerial instructions is easier to do. They could just do it today or tomorrow easily and change the whole Express Entry profile system. But my guess is if you've already have that acknowledgement of receipt, you've submitted a complete EAPR, that should be a complete application that shouldn't be retroactively affected. But, you know, we'll have to see how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to pull up two quick ones. One thing I didn't introduce at the beginning is if your question is super specific, I will ring that bell and tell you to slide over to our firm website and book a consultation. So if your question is just too specific and one that we're just not capable of providing, and we wouldn't without all the facts, a question like this, I want to know, how can I transfer from a closed work permit to an open one that I already have public interest policy? Well, to start with, we don't know what that work permit is, and remain with the same employer. My first permit is about to end. So it is possible to hold multiple work permits at the same time. If you have a closed work permit and then you have an open work permit, the open work permit doesn't generally, well, I should say that it's not restricted by the closed, but I'm not going to say one way or another, you guys, you know, because,
the other
go ahead.
Big alarm bell is that you said you're from Quebec City. And so as soon as you're in Quebec and you're dealing with CSQs and you're dealing with a whole other world of Quebec immigration issues, there's a lot of Quebec specific problems there.
Yes. Yeah. And so once again, we indicate that. And I'm also going to pull up Christopher Carr. He says, and this is anytime you say, can I, this is specific legal advice, and especially this question in light of what's happening. Can I flagpole at Rainbow Bridge if I have an ETA only? I do not have a Canadian visa. Will I be able to re-enter Canada after speaking with the Canadian officer? So speaking as a former Canada Border Service Agency, well, I was an immigration officer on the border. Alicia and I cannot answer that question. And every single port of entry has a different culture. Within that port of entry, each officer has a different view on the world. And when you say, will I be able to re-enter Canada after speaking with the Canadian officers? Well, if you hold an electronic travel authorization, you don't need a visa, because that's your authority to be able to seek entry to Canada. But going down, what happens? All of the restrictions that are in place right now at ports of entry, and then now what the government has announced, we don't know exactly how this is going to play out. But I'll tell you, the Canada Border Service Agency, now that they have a green light, at least with respect to what's happening on the restriction of flagpoling, and if I go back up here, what we're referring to, if you're late to the game and just joining us, one of the changes, minimizing unnecessary border volumes, is implementing changes to end flagpoling. So whenever CBSA sees something like this, the officer's like, well, I heard it, so I'm this is how I'm treating things going forward. I don't need no regulatory statement. I'm just not doing your permit. In fact, they do it right now if they feel like an individual should have been applying from within Canada. So huge flags there, Christopher. Strongly encourage you to book a consult so that we can go through this and give you advice that you can actually rely upon.
And okay, so I had a heartbreaking
Please.
consult this week, and
Mm-hmm.
please, 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 people, um, listen to this as a cautionary tale. So I had somebody book a consult. So it was the principal applicant on a study permit. So the husband had the principal applicant study permit. The wife was here on an open spousal work permit, and the kids were here. And this is really timely because we're coming into the holiday season and people are asking a lot of questions about can they travel back home. And so in this case, the people were visa required. So I know Christopher is ETA and not visa required, but they're from a visa required country. And unfortunately, when the principal applicant had first come, they had a study permit and they had a TRV, a temporary residence visitor visa counterfoil in their passport, but it was only issued as a single entry and it expired after that first year of studies. And the person was in their second year of studies, but they hadn't finished their program. Well, family got sick, and so they went back home to their home country. And they got a leave of absence from their school, but it was only for 150 days. And before they left, they applied for the wrong document. They applied for a visitor record, which is an in Canada application to extend your status. But they didn't need a visitor record. What they actually needed was a new TRV. And Igor has written a whole blog on this on our website about the differences between a TRV and a visitor record. They are not the same thing. The TRV is what allows somebody to come back into Canada if they're from a visa required country. It's a counterfoil that's actually stamped in the passport. And this person had left Canada, didn't get the TRV, and now when we look at the outside Canada processing times from this country for a TRV, it's like 6 months. And so now there is zero way that this person, so they actually went to the airport, they tried to get on the plane, and they turned them around and they said, you can't come to Canada, you don't have a TRV. And even though the study permit's still valid, the TRV is not valid. And so now this person, the principal applicant, can't get back to Canada, can't complete their studies. There's no way they can complete it before their 150-day leave of absence is done. They're going to lose their ability for a post-grad work permit because of that. And their wife and kids who are in Canada now are going to have to go home. Like, it's just awful. So please, 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 please know the difference between what a visa is in terms of a temporary resident visa counterfoil in your passport. And if you need to have one, make sure that if you are at all contemplating leaving Canada, that you have properly applied for and received your new TRV, because it can just destroy your plans in Canada. So be really careful about traveling this holiday season.
I'm going to pull up one other thing, Alicia, if I can find it here. Oh, where did you go, Christopher? Right here. Okay, Christopher, this is yeah, this is 100%. You need to book a consult. So we can't tell you. So I'm so sorry that your post-grad got refused. But book a consult and we can explore, options. Each of those things that you've mentioned there may be something to consider, but we can't really let you know that unless we actually have a consult. So slide over to our firm website. And I think many of you know, you can just do it simply by clicking on the link below, book a consult. It'll take you here and it's super easy. And yeah, just find the next available time. Now we're coming in on Christmas holidays here. And so some of us will be taking some time off. I'm going to definitely keep my calendar open as much as I can. Most law firms shut down over Christmas. And so I've always found that it's useful for me to try to take my holidays at other times and spend Christmas and New Year's with the family, but to put a little bit more time in taking consults during the new year and before the new year at the end of the year, because so many people find themselves in real desperate situations. And so, yeah. And then I'm not sure Joe here says, what do you say? I speak French at a basic level, I think is what he's saying. Okay, well, that's, Alicia, what does basic mean, right? And maybe if it's a level 5, maybe that's sufficient for one of the rural programs. So those of you who don't speak French and feel like, hey, I've got a little bit of time to practice on my hands, you might want to start taking French classes if you have not at this stage.
Mhm. Yeah, keep in
Okay.
mind they have to be all NCLC level 5, so speaking,
Mm-hmm.
reading, listening, and writing.
Exactly. Okay, I'll just pull this one up too for you, Parsa. So came to Canada, international student, Nova Scotia, didn't complete my diploma, living in Winnipeg, LMIA, am I eligible for H&C? And I am not receiving LLA. So the reality is all these questions about H&C, and there's a bunch of other people that asked that as well. Please, please go back to the podcast that Alicia and I did. And so if you go to our firm website, you can access it there, podcast. And Alicia and I,
I think
within our
Igor
Time's
did
Ups.
this one.
Oh yeah, Igor did. So Igor and I, within the Time's Up, but actually, yeah, we did the one on H&Cs here. Oh, I guess I won't start playing it, but you can access it that, and then as well, right here on the YouTube channel, you can watch it, or I think it's also was streamed on LinkedIn, etc., Facebook. So go and watch this one, H&C applications, what you need to know. Because it's definitely going to be something that will help you to understand really when you wouldn't want to claim H&C or file an H&C application. They're highly discretionary. There's limitations, and yeah, it's just a real crazy world to say the least. With all the people who are just thinking, "Hey, let's file an H&C," when in reality, it's not going to be an option for the vast majority of people who have been here, say international students. And there's been rumblings, and this is an interesting thing too, Alicia. Is it possible with these newfound powers that they're looking at entrenching in the department, that they could just say, no, we're not going to process any H&C applications if you fit within these categories. Or worse yet, we're not going to process any refugee or asylum claims made in Canada. And if you fall under these categories, or they say we're not going to process any from India flat out, or from designated countries, we're just not going to consider them. And so this is everything's on the table, I guess. Everything's on the table.
Yeah, they did. There was media announcements saying that they're looking at fast tracking faint hope clause refugee claims. So,
Yep.
they're going to try to expedite refusals on those, basically.
Refusals. Mm-hmm. So Victor says, with this super chat, he says, I'm on a postgrad expiring in 2025. I've studied for 2 years and plan to take a master's before my permit ends. Okay. It's been my third study permit. I have all the docs, including the letter of explanation suggestions. Well, right off the top, Victor, understand that if you have obtained your postgrad work permit, you are not getting another one. So if your plan is to do a master's, maybe, as the law stands right now, you may be able to continue working off campus while you're going to school. But once your master's program is completed, you can't apply for another postgrad work permit. It's a one and done deal. Mm-hmm.
And the problem too, Victor, is that if you are a full-time student and you have a postgrad work permit right now, so you're a postgrad work permit holder, but you go back to school and you're a full-time
Good
student,
point.
you won't get any credit for your high-skilled Canadian work experience. So it's
Yeah.
the worst of both worlds. So
Yeah.
please keep that in mind.
You bet. Okay. Oh, I can't help but post these, Alicia. Batman says, what do you think? Will Justin accept the invitation from President Trump to join the U.S. as a 51st state? And then Com says, do you support Canada to be the 51st state? No. All right.
Absolutely
we can
not.
move on. We can move on. All right. It's kind of funny though. Hey, good question. You got on the live stream. So, okay. And then Filet Mignon 23 says U.S. politics will dictate immigration policy for the next 4 years. Some knee-jerk changes, but some warranted to stem abuse. Well, for sure, they're, in fairness, they're trying to figure out a way to do it. And as I posted, on X, and this is a post I just made just this morning before we went live, right here. If you go and just follow me, I talk at length about my feelings about this process of canceling the job offer, and I truly feel it's a throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And as I list here, first they came for the federal investor programs because of fraud and abuse. Then it was the owner operator LMIAs. Then essentially, although they haven't canceled it yet, the self-employed program. And now and we could add the startup visa in there as well. And now one of the most important tools for genuine employers, legitimate job offers. And then I was kind of tongue in cheek, just guess, like just pointing out absurd examples, and hopefully they would never be a reality. But overall caps on LMIAs, like in the U.S., country-based caps for all temporary residents. We're only going to let so many people in from India, from Nigeria each year. The U.S. does this, right? Further reduction to annual levels. They could reduce it more. Annual caps for spousal sponsorships. Could we see a world where they did that? Well, Quebec, to a large extent, is already kind of doing that. Removal of the whole GTS program, massive overhaul and reduction to the international mobility program, removal of H&C program entirely. That's absurd. I don't think that would ever disappear, and cancellation of asylum claims from within Canada. So, they could pause all immigration programs entirely, which these are just meant kind of as kind of absurd examples. But I'll be honest, when people were floating around, Alicia, that the job offer points were going to be stripped, I couldn't see a world where that was going to happen. And for me, it always comes down to enforcement and just having really severe consequences for those who break the law. If an employer knew that they would be barred for life from participating in the foreign worker program if they were found to have abused the program at whatever level, there would be a huge disincentive. And if individuals who
Well,
also
and
were
to be
buying
fair,
job
Mark,
offers,
and to
go
be
ahead.
fair, if you look at these new programs, the Rural Community Immigration Class, the Francophone Community Immigration Class, they specifically have in there that if employers
Yeah,
have been
they're barred.
violating, if
Yeah, they're
they're
not
on the
eligible.
blacklist, if
Yeah,
they have findings against them, they're not
yeah,
eligible for these
yeah,
programs.
yeah. Well, I look at some of these employers who are found to have committed fairly serious, transgressions, if you will, of immigration policy, and the consequences are so nominal. I keep coming back to the consultant here in Lethbridge who ran an extended care facility and employed workers outright illegally, no work permit at all. I know because the worker was my client, and others that she made work extra hours and, and didn't pay them for those extra hours because the effective rate she was agreeing to pay them on an hourly basis was much lower than what she was being required to pay through the temporary foreign worker program. She's merrily practicing as a consultant today. And employers who abuse the system are charging 30, 40,000 or whatever for a job offer, who then get $100,000 fine. They're laughing. Like,
And,
whatever, who cares?
and I think it's a good time to bring up Com's comment. How
Mm.
can one report fake consultants? And
Yes,
so
yes.
there is a line. And so Mark and I have shared this before, but if you, maybe Mark, you can pull it up, but the
Great.
CBSA fraud tip line
I
for
think it might be the
immigration.
voter watch line. Is it this one, Alicia? Sorry, I'm just trying to do it quick.
And then, yeah, there's also how to report fraud or abuse if you're an international student, if you think visa documents are fake, if you think someone's a possible victim of human trafficking, if you think someone has committed immigration fraud. So there's also the it's how to report fraud or abuse. Immigration Refugees Services Protect Fraud. So
Whoops.
that's the other one. I can put the link in here.
There we go. I think I found it. This one here. Okay. Yeah. And you can choose which one applies to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
Yeah.
this is how you do it. So please, 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 if you think that somebody is ghosting, if they are not a
Yes.
properly regulated immigration consultant, if they are taking people's money, you're not allowed to under Section 91 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act unless you are a proper lawyer. In certain provinces, you can be a paralegal with certain designations or a regulated immigration consultant, but that is it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody is fleecing you and taking your money and is not properly certified, then please, please, please report them.
Yes. Let's see here. Okay, this is from United Till I Die. Nice. Hi, Mark and Alicia. I hope you both are doing great. Based on your experience, do the reason included in PR rejection letter, are they the same as the reasons mentioned in the GCMS notes? Many thanks. So, Alicia, I remember I had well, they haven't done anything with it, so I don't care. I did a review, a personal review with IRCC of some changes, proposed changes that they were going to do to temporary resident, refusal letters to add in the actual GCMS notes so that people didn't have to request them. And this was over 2 years ago now. And I thought, I said, look, this is really what you should do. It's brilliant. It'll save everybody time and hassle. But it hasn't been implemented. And I'm very critical of IRCC for this. This is very Bush League is the best way I'd describe it. To put garbage reasons down that are just vague, that don't really tell people what was wrong, but are just enough to satisfy your legal obligation for reasons, and then force people to have to make a decision. Do I request the GCMS notes? Do I file a leave application for judicial review when I don't actually know 100% what the real reasons are, just to reserve or preserve my right to file that application? All of that could be removed if GCMS notes were included as an attachment on the refusal. And that's what I looked at. And so nothing has come of it. So, yeah, shame on you, IRCC, because you could do a whole lot better. But in short, no, the reasons in your rejection letter may not be as fulsome or detailed as the reasons found in the notes in GCMS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually it's some boilerplate language. They cite a section of the legislation, but they don't give any details about why they think you don't meet it. And so really you're required to go and do access to information and privacy request to get those GCMS notes, or file a judicial review and get those under Rule 9. And so it's difficult to get that information, but you need it in a very timely fashion, because if it's an in-Canada refusal, you only have 15 days to submit that application for leave and judicial review.
Yes. And this is a great opportunity for those who watch our videos. I know that we don't do a very good job of promoting the resources that are actually on our website. And you will see here that we have refusals and delays as one of the topics on our site. So you can go here, you can look at judicial reviews, there's reconsideration, mandamus, and there is a really, really good explanation of how it works, including the timing. You only have 15 days if you are in Canada and you have a refusal to make a decision. And that's express entry. That's a refusal of your work permit extension, a refusal of your bridging open work permit. And so many people don't realize that. And then they contact us, well, maybe on day 14. And it is a complex thing, even though some parts of the leave process now, they're going to more of a streamlined process. Like if you contact on the 14th day and we only have 15 days, it is not going to happen. And then you'll lose that right to file that application. If you're outside, then it's 60 days. But this, that's why we have don't wait here. So definitely go check this out. It explains the process, tight timelines. You can see right here how to make it, the application, how the process goes, each of the steps. And yeah, Igor's got a great video here where he talks about the process. But please go to our website and check these resources out, because they're there for you. And if anything, just to educate yourself. So please, please pay attention to that. Let's see what we have here. I've got one more little super, and we are just at the end of our live stream today. Oh, I don't see. We've got this from Pau, a little super chat, but I don't see any comments. So Pau, if you want to post something in there, if you had that last question, I'll get to yours. But there's a lot of people here that will, okay, I'll pull this one up, chatting. Hello, Mark and Alicia. French will dominate conservatives' immigration policies as you guys had experienced their regime. Okay. I think she means that they mean that you and I have been around long enough, Alicia, that we remember when the conservatives were in power. So we don't know. There are obligations, like there are agreements between the federal government and the Quebec government to help facilitate the fact that we are a bilingual country, French and English. And so those agreements are designed to help encourage and foster the promotion of the French language across Canada. Now, ultimately, the extent to which the Liberal government has pushed it, will the Conservatives continue to go at that clip? I don't know. We just don't know. So we know right now the Levels plans very firmly contemplate Francophone immigration as a critical component to the Levels plans for permanent residents. And there's no more favorable work permit option than the Francophone mobility work permit when it comes to securing work permits outside of the province of Quebec when you speak moderate French. So NCLC 5, really, across all abilities. So not averaged, you guys. This is every ability. So I don't know if you have any last comments before we wrap up our call here. Oh, Alicia, let's see. I just lost your audio. That's weird. Huh. You're still there. We had Alicia and then she disappeared there. You still there? Oh, it's gone, the audio. Well, fortunately, we're at the end of this one. And as you can see from our YouTube channel and wherever you're watching this, we have a live that's happening at 11:15, and we are going to talk specifically about the effect of removing the job offers from the express entry process and what it looks for all of you guys. There was one last super chat from Grace. And if we go here, Grace says, I'm a visitor with a Canadian infant. I have a visitor record till next year, August. I was looking to get a job and get a work permit. Please, are there options for me? Grace, I'm going to ring the triangle and I'm going to encourage you to slide over and book a consult and we can talk about what options might be available for you. Every situation is a little bit different. There are, in some instances, there might be an option for a TRP and a work permit, but it's really under narrow provisions. So Camby, Merry Christmas to you and Merry Christmas to all of you guys. Alicia and I will not be doing a live stream on Christmas Day. At least I don't think, I don't think we will be doing a live. Oh, and yes, I was reminded we do have one super that slid through. Soldier Boy said, May 2034, I'm assuming 2024, applied for a spousal open work permit with spouse, post-grad, December 1st, post-grad approved, spouse refused, okay, spouse jobless, that's a correct refusal. Original spousal valid until December 30th, next step, continue employment, reapply within 90 days. Yeah, you have to reapply as soon as possible. If your work permit is still valid before December 30th, you can reapply as quickly as you can, showing that your spouse has a job offer and meeting whatever other issues are there. You do have the ability to reapply, but I wouldn't be waiting 90 days. If you wait 90 days and then your original spousal open work permit expires, then you have to stop work on the day it expires. So any reapplying that you do has to be before the expiry of your work permit. But once again, I'm going to ring the triangle. I'm going to tell you, book a consult because these types of questions are not ones that we can adequately address. And we would be bad immigration lawyers if we just gave you off the cuff answers that are significantly going to affect your future and the decisions you make with respect to Canadian immigration. We love answering questions and giving updates and talking about the, where the future of immigration is. But when it comes to specific stuff, guys, it's so critical that you choose to book an immigration consultation and understand with our consultation process, this is just the first step. Alicia and I, if you look at it, we have our fees here. We assist clients with all types of Canadian immigration. About the only one we don't do is asylum and refugee. But we can assist you with your appeals. We can assist you with your H&C applications and make sure to tell you not to file them when it's not warranted. And work, study, visit, all those kinds of things. People hire us to do those. And most especially economic PR, which is really our area of critical focus. We love express entry. We love working with people, helping them with all aspects of that, as well as the various provincial nominee programs. So I just want to give you guys a shout out about that. And I want to highlight once again that the Express Entry Masterclass, bi-weekly, we do a masterclass with the Express Entry Accelerator. This is the preeminent Express Entry DIY course. And personally, if you are an individual who's applying for Express Entry and you do not subscribe for this, you are stupid. You are dumb. Okay, I will leave it at that. Links in the description below. Alicia and I are going to go live at 11:15 here in about 9 minutes to talk about the crazy insanity that is, and let me see if I can find it here. I'm going to pull up Minister Miller's little tweet here. This right here is what we're going to be talking about. Canada removes points through LMIA amidst immigration fraud, posted in the Financial Post. But the reality is, if the minister himself is tweeting his own comments to the paper, I think we can rely on the fact that this, all designed to curb fraud tied to job selling, that this is something that is on the horizon, very, very near horizon. All right. And then Alicia and I, we will figure out your audio here in a little bit. And for the rest of you, thanks for tuning in. And we will see you guys every Wednesday. We're here, especially during this crazy times. I may, depending on what my family's doing, I might do a live on Christmas Day. We'll see. But I'll probably be wearing a Santa hat if I do. But Alicia, there's no way I'm going to drag you out to do that. All right. Take care, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.